This will be Distillation Dance 2.5, the implications of the bucket parable. So let's give the short version of the bucket parable again. You have a crafty blacksmith who makes buckets, finds it makes it such that it's easier for people to carry water to and from the river. He then secures the rights or makes it illegal for anybody else but him to create buckets. He then makes it illegal for people to get water out of the river without buckets. And then he proceeds to make it difficult for people to use the buckets without lids, and everybody needs buckets now because without water they'll die, and without buckets they can't get water from the river. And you have the analogy and or parable fitting today's society. In today's society, the bucket is the dollar. The bucket is used to transport a resource from point A to point B. It's used to hold the water. The bucket itself is not necessarily required for life, right? But by way of the crafty blacksmith's machinations, he's actually been able to make the bucket integral to life in that village. And as such, the dollar has become integral for life here. The dollar has become integral for survival. And when I say the dollar, I mean any currency in quote unquote advanced society, right? So if you live in America today, you will own land. You will need a place to stay. You will not own land, but you will need a place to stay, whether you rent or own. You will need food and water, and all of these things require the dollar, or as said in the parable, the bucket. If you begin with the need for water, yes, it may be possible for you to drink water that hasn't been purified out of a river potentially, but in many of the United States, it has been made illegal to capture rainwater. That is correct. It is illegal to capture rainwater. So if you can't capture rainwater and you need water for survival, and you don't happen to have massive filtration plants already embedded in the world, and you're not, you've really, yeah, you're stuck taking water from the city, right, or the municipality or wherever you are, right, and this water comes at a cost in dollars. Let's say you even wanted to live off grid, so you figured it out how to live off grid, how you've got your own water supply out of the groundwater table, um, and you've got land, and you've got farmland, and you've got farm animals and livestock rather, and you can survive on your own without the need for the rest of society. That's all good and well, but if you don't pay your property taxes, that land is no longer yours. That's right. Without the almighty dollar, you have nothing. Even if you have the means with which to take care of your own life. See, the bucket maker, one of the first things he did was he made it illegal to live without his buckets. And the same thing can be said of the dollar bill right now. If you lack dollars, well, it's very difficult to live. You won't be able to pay your rent. You won't be able to pay for water that has been treated. And yes, that food thing that most people go to grocery stores to buy and not grow themselves, yeah, you won't be able to afford that either. So the implications of the bucket parable are such that Lacking dollars will lead to death. Lacking buckets will lead to death in his village, and lacking dollars will lead to death in today's society. Take a moment and think on that. But, I mean, it's not like we didn't know that, right? I mean, Magic Johnson was a millionaire and he got AIDS and he's not dead. That's right. Lacking money will kill you. So let's go get back to topic. Let's look at the business implications of this, right? Let's say, just by chance, you decided that you wanted to start a business. Well, okay, good. Let's start a business. You take time of your life to save up $10,000. $10,000 with which to start a business. Let's say you want to make a restaurant. The restaurant will require that you have a space that you can cook in and a space to serve people, and it will also require, by law, a specific type of fume hood for fire prevention purposes, right? Or to pull the fumes from the cooking away, right? It requires a certain type of hood, which means that if you either A, build the building, which costs way too much, so we're not going to do that today, or rent the building, the building you rent must have certain things that make it up to quote unquote code or law, such that you can go ahead and successfully run your business in today's society. And this is, we're not even counting health inspectors. This is just building code, right? So you want to rent, and we'll say the rent is $2,000. But in order for you to start this rental agreement, the person renting to you is going to want first and last month's rent. Meaning, let's say the rent is $2,000, right? Meaning $4,000 up front. All right. You got $10,000. You're good, right? Let's think on this. So it's going to require a certain amount of food with which you need it that you're going to have to cook in order to get this restaurant off the ground. So you're going to have some product and you're going to have somebody cooking. Okay, let's say you're the one cooking. You're the one doing everything. You're the one cooking. You're the one manning the cash register. It's all good. So you don't have any employees, but you're going to go through $2,000 a month in food, and food is a perishable item, so it goes bad really quickly, right? If you don't use it all, and you've got the freezers and whatnot, but if you don't use all the food, some of it will go bad. $2,000 a month would put you at, for 2 months, $4,000 there. So we've used. We're not even going to count the business license cost because that's another thing entirely. But we're going to go your first and last month's rent, and you have 2 months worth of food, and then you have to pay that second month's rent. So that's $10,000 in 2 months. And if your business hasn't taken off and isn't selling things like hotcakes at a huge profit margin, which, by the way, most businesses don't. That's right. Most businesses do not turn a profit in their first year of business. We're just talking 2 months. People probably haven't even heard about your restaurant yet. What's next? You just saved up $10,000. And in 2 months, that $10,000 is gone. All right, now, granted, let me explain to you what it takes to save up $10,000 because most people don't do the math because they just see the numbers and they don't do the math on what it actually costs them. Let's use minimum wage, federal minimum wage, which is currently $7.25 an hour. This may be subject to change at some point later on, but $7.25 an hour. At $7.25 an hour, in order for you to save up $10,000, you would have to work. Let me see how many hours. About 1,500 hours. Just about. Now, if you factor in that the government is going to take 20, 10, 15 to 25% of that in taxes between Social Security, Medicare, and your federal income tax as well as your state tax. Let's say you lose 25% in taxes, just for nice round numbers. That would mean that now you would actually have to work 2,000 hours to save $10,000. Now, if you work a full time job, you generally work 40 hours a week, or that's what it used to be before they changed the definition of full time to about 32, but that's neither here nor there. And 40 hours a week, 2,000 hours, that requires 50 weeks. That requires 50 weeks. Now, a year is 52 weeks, 365 days. So you would have to work a full year at minimum wage to save up $10,000 to start a business. I'll give that a second to sink in. You just worked an entire year at minimum wage to save up $10,000 to start a business. And that money, if you are all right with this business, may last you 2 months. So now your 2 months are up, and you need to pay for that next food shipment, otherwise you're gonna have to shut down the restaurant. What do? You go to the bank. The bank says, "Hey, it's time. Well, you're looking for a loan. Let's see what we can do for you." You go to the bank. The bank looks at several things: your credit, whether or not the business is profitable. The bank looks at several things, and they are now the bucket lenders, right? Or the bucket creators, right? Because they all tie into that Federal Reserve banking system, which is the one which has the power to make the buckets. They get to determine whether or not your business lives or dies. So you now go to this bank, and they have a choice as to whether or not they loan you money, how much money they will loan you if they do loan you money, and whether or not you'll even be eligible for another loan if they do loan you money the first time and you flop. All these decisions and your business, your livelihood, your potential children are riding on this. And who makes this decision? Somebody in a back room somewhere. Do you ever fully know the criteria for the decision? No. You go to the marketplace and want to buy a bucket from the bucket maker, and the bucket maker says, "Yeah, I can't sell you this bucket today, but I might have one tomorrow." In this way, the federal banking system has complete and total control over whether most businesses succeed or fail. All right, all right. You don't want to start a business, you just want to go work for somebody else. I get it. But is that a proper solution either? No, no, no. It doesn't really avoid the situation. Because let's say that the blacksmith, this crafty blacksmith, or the bucket maker, or the bank, as we call them now, adopts a policy where the bank president says they don't really like French people, so they're not going to give loans out to French people or give loans to businesses that employ French people. But they'll give loans to businesses that speak English and loans to businesses that don't do business with the French people. That's simple. Now, before you say that's wrong, that's illegal, let's just say that it's the case, right? Now we have a banker, because the bank is his own institution, that can decide at random whose business, you know, is going to fail. Well, not at random. They have their own criteria, and they can determine that they don't want to support this business. And let's say the bank president one day went into your restaurant and didn't like the food that you had to serve that day, And that you come to that bank for a loan. That bank president can simply say, "Yeah, no, we're not going to give them a loan." But that's owning a business. Back to working, right? So now, let's say there's a French person, and this French person applies for a job. This job now is through a company that now most companies they start off with either a loan because either a loan or not, but most companies have loans because they don't have the wherewithal to start the business and get it running for that period of time without taking capital they don't have. Most businesses don't run a profit within their first year. So, starting a loan, starting with a loan, the company is now beholden to that bank. And if they ever want to get another loan, well, they better do what the bank says, right? And you just happen to be a French speaking person. What are your chances when you apply for that job that you're going to get that job? Well, if that company wants to keep their ability to get another loan, they're going to not hire you as quickly, right? They're going to pick somebody that speaks English over somebody that speaks French for that position. And they themselves may not dislike the French people, but if they want to keep their business running, if they want to have the potential for their business to even continue, they will kowtow to the bank and, well, we're going to hire more English speaking people because the bank doesn't want to give loans to these French speaking people. That's all good. That's all good. But so now you can't get a job. So what are you going to do? Well, you're French speaking, so you go ahead and try and open a business, and then you go to that very same you go to that same bank and try to get a loan, and you can't get. Yeah. Okay. So now look at this in terms of parts of town. The English speaking part of town, which can go ahead and get the loan readily, has businesses and has employers who can hire their English speaking people. So people are going home with paychecks. They have money to spend. They can take care of their families. The French speaking part of town, not only is a large portion of their population unemployed, but they also can't get loans to start businesses, so they can't employ their own people. And well, yeah, it's tough to be French in that town. But let's just say they didn't perform that policy and completely exclude the French from the loans. But what if they just said that for every one French loan we gave, we'll give five English loans, or let's say that every French person that asked to loan $10,000, we're gonna give 50,000 to the English person who asked for the loan. Well, at that point, the French person, like the man in the village who only gets one bucket, cannot compete on equal ground. Now, we have to understand at the basis, the dollar is worthless. We use the dollar to give value to the work that we perform. But now it has become to the point that you cannot, you literally cannot take a stick, tie a string to it, and put a pole in the water to feed yourself without money or not being without it being illegal. So the crafty blacksmith is the banking system, and the banking system trickles down across all transactions which require money. They can literally determine who succeeds and fails. Oh, by the way, you need that money to survive, don't you? You need those buckets to get the water out of the river because it's illegal to get the water without it. These are the very harsh implications of the bucket parable that most people don't pay attention to. If you lack buckets, you can't build a house. You can't have a roof over your head. You can't have shelter. You can't have food. You can't have water. Oh, and don't even get me started on a vehicle, because if you need a vehicle, it's going to require gas and oil and maintenance, and all these things require money. Your quality of life is highly determined by the amount of money that is allotted to you. That's right. I say allotted to you because at the end of the day, there's someone determining whether or not you get a job, whether or not you get a loan, whether or not you meet the qualifications. Stop, think, and understand. The crafty blacksmith has us all under his thumb.